Welcome, Daf Hey of Likkutei Torah, Sefer Vayikra, and we're starting from Ois Daled. It's in the middle of a mimer about how learning of Kabbalah and Hasidus relates to salt, and let's begin. So now we can understand that the level of learning Torah where the person is intellectually involved and his intellect becomes one with Hashem's intellect. So that is the outer facade, and inside the essence of his soul is connecting with the essence of Hashem, with Ein Sof, Hashem's unlimited light. And this happens when we learn Nigla, when we learn the revealed part of Torah, which instructs us on how to interact with this world, what is kosher, what is invalid, what is pure, what is impure, etc. And in those physical items which we deal with when we learn halacha and Gemara, inside that is Hashem's wisdom, the chachma of the highest world of Atzilus, and inside that is Ein Sof, Hashem's pure, unlimited light that comes all the way down into physical things, in order that the person who learns that halacha will grasp, intellectually grasp the idea behind it. And since it's talking about physical things, he'll be able to grasp the idea behind it. It's something that he relates to, and through that bond in a very deep way with the halacha. And since this is Hashem's chachma, and it's one with Hashem, so the person learning that halacha becomes one with Hashem as well. By contrast, when learning Kabbalah, because here it's discussing spiritual matters from higher worlds and angels and the different levels of Gan Eden, so the person who learns that, and he learns about ההשתלשלות, the order of the chain of evolution of godly lights. So he doesn't comprehend it properly. He only knows what he's being told, but he doesn't actually understand it as something within his experience. And therefore, it's not as great a level of bonding as when he's learning about halachas like public domain and private domain, which are things he clearly understands. And therefore, when a person learns Kabbalah, the degree of bonding with Hashem is less. He only knows the facts without really understanding it in a sort of way that he can really take it in. That's the meaning of the statement in Priyetz Chaim, that Kabbalah is in the world of Atzilus, whereas Gemara is in the world of Bria, Mishnah in the next world down in Yetzirah, and then Tanakh, the scriptures, is in the world of Asiya. What do we mean by this? Atzilus is the highest world, Asiya is the lowest world. Are we saying that that the Tanakh is the lowest spiritually? It's only in the world of Asiya, whereas Mishnah is higher, and then Gemara is higher still, and then Kabbalah is higher still. Is Tanakh really the lowest? It's the source of everything, and that's actually the word of Hashem. But what we mean is that with Tanakh, it descended all the way down to Asiya, to the physical world, and that's why with Tanakh the main thing is just to write the letters and properly, and when we're learning, the main thing is simply saying the holy words. And it's not really about doesn't always come into understanding, and sometimes we can't even say the words because say everything, because in the written Torah and the Tanakh, you have the words that you can pronounce, and then you have the crowns above the letters that they're there and they're important, but we can't even pronounce it. They're just there. And then when we move on to Mishnah and Gemara, so in the worlds of Yetzirah and Asiya, so there we understand it fully. And then Kabbalah in the world of Atzilus, because it doesn't descend at all, it stays in Atzilus and therefore stays beyond us. And so based on this, the main learning is Nigla, is Halacha and Gemara, Mishnah and Gemara. Because that's where we really understand and bond with Hashem. So if so, how come in so many Sfarim it speaks so much about how great learning of Kabbalah is? And it talks about this in Zohar and Eitz Chaim and Shalah and Reishis Chachma. So what's so special if we don't understand it properly and therefore we don't bond properly? We don't really internalize this connection. So before explaining that question, we will first discuss what the Gemara says in Kiddushin, that you're meant to learn 1/3 Mikra, so 1/3 Tanakh, 1/3 Mishnah, and 1/3 Gemara. So learning of Tanakh is very different from Mishnah and Gemara. And like we said, that with Tanakh, you don't need, the understanding is not even always there and not as important. The main thing is saying the words. Unlike with learning of Halacha, Gemara, Mishnah, there the main thing is understanding. Yes, you should also pronounce the words, but the main thing is the understanding. Without that, you're not considered to have learnt. On the other hand, with Tanakh, even if you just say the words without understanding, you're still learning Torah. And that's why even a simpleton who's not able to learn Torah still says the bracha, the blessing on thank you Hashem for giving us the Torah each day and for the ability to learn Torah, because he can learn Torah through reading psukim. And now in Paradise it says that even someone who can't put the words together, still, if he's involved in reading Tanakh, so he is still rewarded. And on the contrary, when someone learns Torah in order to learn information, because it's like a history book, then he's actually learning at a not at a good level, and hopefully, and he said, and Paradis says that hopefully he won't actually lose out from this. It's actually better if he would just be reading the words than learning Torah for history or archaeology or whatever other reason. So we need to understand this. Why is there this difference in learning Torah, whether understanding is important or not? So the explanation is because the oral Torah comes out of the written Torah. So it's there to tell us, to instruct us in what to do. It's when Hashem's light encloses itself in Chachma, in wisdom. It starts off with the highest level of Chachma Vatzilus, and then goes down to Chachmat, the lower level of Chachma, then descends through the Chachma of each world until it comes into the practical halacha. But then there are other parts that don't come down. We don't understand the spiritual meaning of all the travails of Yosef necessarily, and going down into Egypt and Potiphar. Like the Rambam says, that there's no difference in the holiness of the pasuk talking about the descendants of Ham, the cursed son of Noach, or the wife of the prince of Edom, or the Pilegesh of the concubine of Esau. All of those verses are at the same spiritual level of Anochi Hashem Lekecha, where Hashem says at the beginning of the Aseret Dibros, I am Hashem your God, or Shema Yisrael, talking about Hashem's oneness, because really the whole Torah is from Hashem and it's all equally holy. So when this Torah comes from Hashem's unlimited light, if we don't understand it or we don't appreciate the holiness, that's because it's so high that it can't come down into our understanding. And that's why when we learn psukim, the main thing is simply reading the words, because the fact that it came down so low to just reading words, it's because it's so high, it's beyond us. And therefore it stays holy. It might not be in Chachma and wisdom, but it's in Keser, the crown, which is beyond Chachma. Because Torah, it says in Zohar that Torah comes out of Chachma, which means that Torah really is beyond Chachma. It only comes out of Chachma. And therefore, the part of Torah which comes into logic and rationale is only a ray of Torah that comes through contractions in order to be limited in its understanding. But the essence of Torah, which is in Keser, in the crown, beyond spheres and beyond Chachma, that can't come into Chachma, into wisdom. But still, it can come into the words of the written Torah. And that's why the written Torah, the Tanakh, is called Mikra. The word Mikra means that we're calling out and bringing down, we're calling out to Hashem's unlimited light to bring it down into this world, even the part which is totally, Hashem's unlimited light, which is totally beyond us. And we can't understand it. And look elsewhere where we discussed how the words of Torah is higher than the understanding of Torah. And this is similar to a crown made of precious stones. So stones are only inanimate, which are far lower than the person, but still the precious stones are very precious and they sit above the head as part of the crown. And that's the letters of Torah where we don't understand it. They're only inanimate, but still they're precious stones in the crown above the head. Like it says that the entire Torah is really names of Hashem. And like the statement of Chazal that the stories and conversations of the servants of our forefathers is greater than the Torah of the children, because the Torah of the children is what comes into Chachma, into understanding, whereas the stories of the servants of the forefathers even is the Torah which is beyond understanding, meaning it's Hashem's unlimited light itself. And that's why the Torah spends so much time on stories like the story of Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, more than it discusses the details of many halachas, or the story of Yosef being sent into slavery in Egypt. So the main thing here is the words, and that's why like we said before, simpleton over the page, when a simpleton learns the Torah Shebechsav, he reads the words, he's accomplishing something great. On the other hand, with the oral Torah, you have to specifically understand it. Because now, when the Gemara says you should learn 1/3 of your time Tanakh, that includes also the Agadas. The Alter Rebbe says the Agadic interpretations and stories and lessons on the verses of Tanakh. Because first of all, there are explanations on Tanakh, and secondly, the whole style is to touch the soul rather than to touch the minds. It's not really something that about understanding, it's about just the holiness in the soul. Similarly, learning the inner parts of Torah and Kabbalah is also part of the 1/3 Tanakh. Because with Kabbalah too, it's not about understanding, it's about the holiness. So we don't fully understand it, we're just learning facts without really being there because it's beyond our world. Unlike with learning halacha, Gemara, where where it talks about things that we do relate to. It talks about physical fruit and physical business and physical people. It's all things we understand. Whereas when we learn about Hishalshalos, the chain of spiritual worlds, we only learn about the facts without actually understanding it because it's beyond our experience. But it's still very great. Actually, the fact that we don't understand it properly is because it's like Tanakh, which is Hashem's pure light, above coming into intellect. Now in Zohar, it talks about the three things that are all connected together: Hashem, the Torah, and the Yidden. And each of them have the inner part, the inner concealed part, and the outer revealed part. So the outer revealed part of Torah is the medium which connects the outer part of Hashem with the outer part of the Yidden. Whereas the inner part of Torah connects the inner part of Hashem, Hashem's unlimited light, with the inner part of our souls. And this is similar to discuss how we just say that this on the pasuk Chasti Hashem Kilei Samno, that there are two levels of chesed, two levels of kindness. So similarly, there's always the internal and the external. or similar to Sovev and Mamale, how Hashem's light, which surrounds worlds, which is the higher, deeper level, and then as it fills worlds. And we can also add further explanation of the specialty of learning Kabbalah and Pnimis HaTorah, the inner part of Torah, from what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya Negeres HaKodesh, that although we don't understand the ideas of Kabbalah in a deep way, but still, it's if parts of Kabbalah are explaining mitzvahs based on Sod, based on the secrets of Torah, and learning this, the depth of the mitzvah is no worse than learning the halachas of the mitzvah. So that's certainly special. And even other parts of Kabbalah, which discusses Seder Shalshlos, the chain of worlds, and how Hashem's light descends down to us. So that is the mitzvah of Yedias Hashem, of knowing Hashem, which is a very special mitzvah. And therefore it's very special to learn that part of Kabbalah and Pnimis HaTorah as well. Now, it's true, though, that this is only one mitzvah, knowing Hashem, and there's another 612 other mitzvahs as well. And therefore, when we learn the halachas of all the other mitzvahs, that's also very special. We have to do a lot of that. But still, learning Kabbalah, both the learning Kabbalah where it explains different mitzvahs and understanding about how Hashem interacts and creates worlds, that too is very special as the mitzvah of Yedias Hashem. Okay, hey. Now we can explain the Gemara we quoted just earlier about dividing one's time in three. Learn 1/3 Tanakh, 1/3 Mishnah, and 1/3 Gemara. And many of the Mefarshim had difficulty with this. The Ran says it doesn't mean for one's whole life. Maybe at the beginning of, like the Rambam says, that so the Ran says it doesn't mean literally to divide it in three. The Rambam says no, it does mean literally divide in three, but it's only at the beginning of your learning. But once you become more advanced, then you learn mostly Gemara, and just from time to time look at Tanakh so you won't forget it. So according to the Ran, there's just three parts of learning: Tanakh, Mishnah, and Gemara. It doesn't mean literally divide it equally in thirds. Whereas the Ram says yes, it does, but only at the beginning of your learning. But then the phrase that the Gemara uses, Olam Yishalish, a person should always divide in three, doesn't fit well. And also, people don't know how long they're going to live. It implies that you should, for your whole life, divide each day into three. Others answer, the Riv quotes the Rameh, that this was only in earlier generations, not for us. But now, based on what the Alter Rebbe explains, it fits very well, because at the beginning of one's learning, he should actually learn Tanakh for 1/3 of the time. Even though the Gemara is a lot longer, but yeah, you have to start off with learning a lot of Tanakh in order to then be able to learn Gemara, which quotes from Tanakh. Then, once he knows Tanakh, so then he still learns 1/3 Tanakh, but included in Tanakh is Pnimis HaTorah, the inner parts of Torah, and Agada, things that inspire his soul, and therefore he keeps learning 1/3 of what is included in the broader category of Tanakh. And Medrash Rabbah may also be included in this, even though in the Gemara it implies even though in Talmud Torah it implies that Medrash is part of the 1/3 Mishnah, but that's only Medrashim which are halachic Medrashim, like Sifra and Sifri, etc. But there are sources that show that learning Medrash, which is more Agadic Medrash, would be included in the 1/3 Tanakh, because it's there not as intellectual analysis, but to provide guidance and rebuke and inspiration, and that's therefore part of the 1/3 Tanakh. And therefore makes sense for one's whole life. He learns 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, with halacha as part of Mishnah, and then Gemara as another third. Now, this idea of dividing the one's time into three is based on the three worlds. We said that, but the pasuk says, and Hashem says, to my glory, barasiv yatzartiv af asisiv, I've created it, I've formed it, I've also made it. So the glory is Torah. And Torah has these three parts in the world of creation. Barasiv, I created it. Yitzarativ, I formed it, which is the world of Yitzira. And also, Afasisiv, I also made it, which is the world of Asiya. Gemara, as we said before, is in the world of Bria. Mishnah in the world of Yitzira. And then Tanakh comes all the way down to the world of Asiya. And the reason it says Af also is to include the inner parts of Torah and Kabbalah, which is also included with Tanakh as the 1/3 Tanakh. Now, based on this, we can explain why the Pnimis HaTorah, the inner parts of Torah, is compared to salt. And like we said before, that salt on one hand by itself, it doesn't taste good, but it sweetens the meat. That the nigla parts of Torah, the revealed parts of Torah, are compared to bread and meat, like we see that when it says about Chava, that now I have Adam says, now I have someone like me, a bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. So this refers to Torah Shabbat, the oral Torah, which is compared to the mother, unlike Torah Shabbat, the written Torah, which is compared to the father. And we see other references to linking meat with Talmudic learning. So the revealed part of Torah is compared to meat, where we understand it properly. On the other hand, the inner parts of Torah, where we only know the facts, but we don't understand it in such a full way because it's beyond our experience. So that is like salt. Now, when Mashiach comes, we'll understand the inner parts of Torah just like the nigla, just like the revealed parts. But right now, we don't yet do that. So it's like salt, because by itself, it doesn't have flavor, meaning we don't understand it fully. But it does add flavor to the meat. Now, it says in Iter to Reb Nosson that if a person has medrash but no halacha, he's never tasted wisdom. And if a person has halacha, not medrash, he's never tasted a sense of God-fearingness, of yiras chet. And the reason is because when you have medrash represents the inner parts of Torah, whereas halacha represents the revealed part of Torah. Without the revealed part of Torah, you haven't tasted wisdom because we don't really understand the inner part of Torah because it's beyond our experience. Whereas without the inner part of Torah, we don't have yiras chet, we don't have the fear of Hashem and fear of sin. Because yes, Pnimis HaTorah, the inner parts of Torah, we only have a ray. We don't actually have it fully, but it's a ray of something greater. It's from Hashem's light itself. And even though it's only a ray, it brings to Yiras Shamayim, to fear of heaven. Now, it says that Chacham Adif min Navi, that a wise person is greater than a prophet. Now, the prophet understands the thing properly. He actually sees Hashem. He has a vision of Hashem, so he actually gets it fully. Whereas the Chacham, the wise person, only understands it in his mind, but he hasn't actually seen it. So we could, if we compare them, we could say that the Navi has Hasagas HaMahus. He actually understands the concept, whereas the Chacham, the wise person, simply has Yedias HaMatzias. He knows the facts. But still, the wise person is greater. And similarly, through learning Pnimis HaTorah, we reach something greater. Because the Chacham, the wise person, can reach a higher level, understand the higher level. And yes, it's only a ray from that high level, but it's still something higher. And like difference between bracha, which is blessing, and haydah, which is just admitting and humbling ourselves before Hashem. So yes, a blessing is bringing the light down to us so that we can take it in, whereas haydah is simply admitting and nullifying oneself before Hashem. But on the other hand, with the blessing, we take it in, but it's only something limited. Whereas with admission and self-nullification, we connect to essence, and that's like Kabbalah. We're connecting to essence, but we don't take it in fully, like a nigla, as we do with the revealed parts of Torah. Over the page onto the beginning of Vav, like we see that the halacha is that if both one's parents and one's teacher lost something, so whose item do you return first? Who do you do Hashavas Aveda first? First the teacher, even though the parents give the person the whole essence. He wouldn't exist without his parents. Whereas the teacher only gives a ray of an idea. But still, that ray of an idea, it's something greater. It's Torah, and therefore the ray of Torah is greater than the essence of the physical person. And this is like the learning the inner parts of Torah, which we only have a ray, we don't fully grasp it, but it's something greater, and therefore it has an advantage over the revealed parts of Torah. Now, in Masechta Seifrim, it quotes so that in Erkei Akinoim that, and it's quoted in Erkei Akinoim that Tanakh is compared to salt, and this fits with what we've explained before, because salt is something which is beyond understanding, but it adds flavor to the whole thing. And this is also why salt is called Bris Elikecha, the covenant with Hashem, because it's what creates this bond and connection, and a great love beyond intellect with Hashem. And that's like a covenant where you say, no matter what, no matter if it makes sense or not, I am committed to you. And bringing down this great love into one's soul is through learning Torah, because Torah connects one with Hashem and with Hashem's unlimited light, and in particular, Primus Torah. So now, after a person's life, he's asked different questions. He's asked if he set time for Torah and if he analyzed Torah in depth. But even after all that, the Gemara concludes that if he has Yirah Shamayim, if he has reverence of Hashem, then good. If not, then there's something awfully wrong. And it gives a mashal, a parable of a person who says to his messenger, his attendant, please bring me some wheat. He went upstairs and got it. And he says, wait a sec, did you mix in some spices? He said, no. He says, without the spices, it's useless because it's going to go off. It would be better if you didn't bring it. So explanation spiritually is that the wheat represents Torah, in particular the revealed part of Torah, but because the wheat, chita, is the numerical value of 22, which is the 22 letters of the Torah, which is why at Shavuos, when the Torah was given, we bring an offering of wheat. And the spices, which is like salt, it represents the Yirah Shamayim and the Kabbalah, the understanding and connecting to Hashem. So when we have the spices, then good. If not, it's all problematic. And now it adds in the word for me. Did you mix in for me the spices? What does this word for me mean? That when we learn, when we have Yirah Shamayim, fear of heaven, so then it becomes Hashem's Torah. Then the wheat is not just wheat, it's Hashem's wheat. The Torah is not just academia, it's godly. And that's through the Yirah Shamayim. And whereas without that, there's something very basic missing, a major problem. Okay, so in short, we have that when a person learns, so he connects to Hashem, and on one hand, learning Nigla has an advantage because since we understand it better, we're bonding in a deeper way. And then we go on to explain how with Tanakh and with Kabbalah, it's not so much about the understanding, it's about the holiness. And based on that, even someone who doesn't understand can still do the mitzvah of learning Torah through reading words of Tanakh. And this is the inner part of Torah, which connects us to the inner part of Hashem. And this also explains how we should divide our time in three, because Tanakh includes also Kabbalah and Agada. And this is also the salt that when we have this elements of holiness, of Yiras Shamayim, which is achieved through Kabbalah and Agadata, so then that preserves all our Torah learning, that all of it should be holy, not just academia and information.